professional internship experience at a company called Sofwerx in Tampa, Florida. Sofwerx itself is a company that was created under a partnership intermediary agreement between a different company called Doolittle Institute and U.S. Special Operations Command, or USSOCOM. Sofwerx specifically is a startup company helping in specific projects and specializing in military projects. So military personnel will tell Sofwerx and all the different departments there to work on these specific problems and to try and find the solutions to them. And as such, to figure out these problems and work on these projects, it heavily focuses on encouraging an innovative and collaborative environment, kind of completely different from like an office environment. And so my specific learning outcome goals for this project were, as I was actually working in the data science little department they had, it was to increase my knowledge about data science and machine learning. I want to learn more about it to be able to do well in the internship. And then two outcomes that the company itself wanted their interns to learn was to develop the skill of working with a team, but also the skill to work independently, but more so without, not just like alone by yourself, but more so without supervision or without complete direction. You have to do things on your own. And lastly, what got me interested in the internship in the first place, they advertised for project management interns, and so I wanted to develop my project management skills while working on these projects for the internship. And how I met these learning outcomes was related to the work I performed. To learn how to work with a group, you have to work in a group. The best way to learn is from that experience. And we were always with other team members. We weren't working by ourselves, or not physically, but we were always assigned to a group that was assigned to work on a specific project. All of the team members worked together, collaborated with each other, met with each other, discussed the best ways to work on these projects, and just we were always collaborating with each other to work on these problems. But to gain experience working independently, the entire internship could be done remotely. You never really had to step into the company office, and you were allowed to work independently by yourself. You never really had like a set time to come in or check in, check out of the company, like a time log. You always had to decide when you were going to work, what you were going to work on, just so long as you did your work. They always held those expectations of you. And it was very, pretty overwhelming at first to learn that, but as with more time, you gain more experience knowing like what you should be doing and how to work by yourself or solve specific problems by yourself and not just reaching out to find the answers. But to always keep in touch, we utilized Slack, which is a very popular company chat software. A lot of companies use it, and so it was good to learn how to use Slack to keep in touch. And the specific data science projects I worked on to learn more about data science, we mainly worked on two. One was to detect anomalous behavior, and the other was for gun detection from camera feed. I'll talk about that later. And in project management, everyone had their specific roles on the teams, and I was kind of assigned the project manager role, but also helping on the project whenever I could. I developed schedules for the team. I kept track of the work that was being performed, kind of managed, the right word. In our grouply meetings, I kept notes and took minutes so that everyone could review back all those notes and see what was discussed during the meetings and everything. And so that was an example of all the work I performed. To link it to the coursework, as a computer science, jumping right into data science was a jarring term because I'd never really been exposed to it at all or knew what it encompassed. But there were some universal courses that I learned that did help out in the internship. Programming skills, specifically in Python, because data scientists love Python. Knowing those basic programming skills helped out a bunch and helped me learn new specific Python libraries that data scientists like to use. Of course, intro to programming 1 and 2 helped. And in project management, learning about that beforehand in the project management classes and in software engineering to an extent. I was able to apply what I learned by developing schedules and assigning duties and responsibilities and engaging team members. I was able to apply that to these projects during this internship, and it helped out a lot. To talk more in depth about the work I performed, the first project was to detect anomalous behavior, specifically through machine learning. So the whole scenario they presented us with is a lot of people usually have security systems set up in their homes, and the military also usually has security systems, but they have to kind of be pre-programmed. You have to like turn it on, and whenever something happens while it's on, then the security system will work. But the challenge was to train a machine or train this system that was monitoring just say some location, but we had to train it to be able to differentiate between normal behavior, just people using it just in that location normally, and anomalous behavior, which could possibly lead to an intrusion. So someone could be trying to break in, and we had to train the machine to be able to tell the differences between those. For this specific project, we didn't actually handle collecting the data because they already did that prior to the internship. They handed the data to us, and we had to handle it, format it, and after that, we had to analyze it and draw conclusions and visualize our work.
What's the data format you perform?
How much formatting?
No, the data format. They collect the data, right? And then you format it. What kind of format are you using?
They put it into JSON files, and the format is similar to like a CSV file, or think of like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. It's a 2D, essentially a 2D array of data. One of the project problems was there was a lot of data to go through, actually, and only some of it was only really relevant to our project. So the team had to shift through the data and determine what was appropriate to use, what was not appropriate to use, what would actually lead to the results. And a lot of the interns actually had very little knowledge about data science, machine learning, or Python in the beginning. So it was in a scenario where we had to learn more about what we were doing as we were doing it, which is a good experience to have sometimes, because sometimes you'll be thrown into situations where you'll need to learn more how to handle it as you need to handle it. One specific problem we came into was how to represent non-numeric data in an algorithm, because usually algorithms take in numbers, but saying the light switch was turned on, how can we possibly represent that? And we learned to assign numeric data to these specific values. So like the number 1 would represent when a door is open, and number 2 would represent when it's closed. So we numerized or binarized the data as we saw fit. And for the project results, on just the right-hand side is a snippet of the script that we wrote to process the data. It was all formatted into those 2D arrays with all the excess fat data cut off. We split it into training and testing sets to train and test out the algorithm. We utilized a k-nearest neighbors algorithm as that generated the most accurate results as compared to logistic regression and other algorithms similar to it. And for those specific results, we found that the independent variables of time, the type of sensor that went off, and the state of the sensor, how that sensor changed, were the biggest indicators of the type of behavior that was going on. So we would be collecting data, and the data would be encompassing when was this door open, or when was this door locked or unlocked. This light was turned on during this time. What does that behavior mean? And so from that, we could generate a confusion matrix that indicated it was detecting just normal behavior and guessing it correctly around 724 times. And it would detect anomalous, unknown, possibly dangerous behavior and guessing it correctly around 356 times. And for guessing either or, but getting it wrong, it did that about 100 times each. So the overall accuracy for this script was around 84%, and the area under ROC, which is an indicator of how confident our algorithm was, it had a mean of 0.896, rounded up to around 0.9. Compared to 1 being the most confident, it knows 100% sure what it's saying, and 0 being the least confident, meaning the system is making just wild guesses as to what the behavior was. We generated a fairly accurate and confident script. The next project we handled was gun detection. They had these cameras just set up right in their main lobby of the company that we could have access to. And our objective was to see if we could have these cameras be able to detect if there was a gun within the feed. So if a possible intruder just came into a building, the gun would be able to detect, or the camera would be able to detect a gun, and then tell some sort of system to take some sort of countermeasures to possibly close gates. And in fact, for part of the project, the goal was to even set up a little light to kind of flash and blind any possible intruders, but we actually didn't get to work on that much. The whole project sort of changed rapidly. Unfortunately, that would have been pretty cool to set up. But we had to utilize different technologies such as TensorFlow, which is an API that's used to detect objects in general. So we could use it to train a model to be able to detect guns. Used OpenCV to access the camera feeds, and Minio, which is similar to a cloud storage system, to store all of the data that we needed. We had to collect gun data and train a TensorFlow model to be able to detect these guns. And one of the goals as we worked on the project was to improve the accuracy and the performance of the code that we used. A few of the problems that we came to this specific project was that in the previous project, we had all of our data handed to us, and we were told that we'd be working with this data. But on this project, we had to actually collect the data ourselves, which actually is pretty intensive because, for an example, if we're collecting some data of someone with a gun wearing just a red shirt, that could train the camera to be able to detect guns pretty well, but with people with a red shirt. If someone came in with a gun with a blue shirt, the model may not have a lot of data about that, and that could cause the accuracy to be thrown off. So we have to be very thorough in the amount of data that we have to collect and train the model with. And of course, we had to learn all these new technologies while working on the project. We had to learn how it worked and then apply that to our specific project. And then we came into an accuracy issue. How on this very large picture on this camera feed, how could we specifically zoom into long guns, that they call it, or somehow just handheld pistols? So our strategy for that was to actually run two different models. One was trained to detect people, and then once it did that, it would actually zoom in on that image of the person, and then try to detect guns within that zoomed in image, as it's a lot more easier to detect objects if they're closer up to see than if they were more far away. But unfortunately, that caused a different problem in which running two different TensorFlow sessions caused major optimization issues. It was really slow. So our solution to that was to split split the code into two different scripts, one that ran one model, one that ran the other. And for our project results, it essentially is a little self-explanatory. We were able to train a model that was able to detect pistols and what's called long guns, which could be rifles, shotguns, something like that. We made it fairly positive, or fairly accurate to avoid false positives, and maintains its optimization. So it could be run in real time with a real camera. And that's just an example image of what the camera can see. It tries to detect things and put what they call bounding boxes around its objects. And that guy who has a test pistol with the bounding box that's red, it detected that he had a gun. So overall, the internship was a very positive experience. I met my learning outcomes of working with a team. All the other interns were very collaborative and very nice to work with. I learned more about independence as I had to do all of this remotely most of the time. And I learned more about project management, data science, and machine learning. But a few other things I also learned that I didn't expect to was to learn how a startup environment works, which is fairly different from a very structured office type environment, as the goals of the project would change fairly quickly and easily without notice. And I also learned how to solve specific problems that never really had a definitive answer. Because on all of these projects, we had to kind of decide what was the best way of going about it to get to a certain goal we had in mind. So nothing was really completely laid out for us. We had to find ways there. And it was just a good experience working on more professional projects. And that's a little bit of geography. I guess, any questions?
A quick question. When you are managing the project, did you use any software like Microsoft the project or?
We didn't use Microsoft. We actually used Trello,
Okay.
if you know what that is.
Okay, so you keep tracking of the progress based on the Gantt chart maybe.
Actually, we didn't use.
Did you create Gantt chart, something like this?
We had to create a diagram of the schedule. It was kind of left up to us though. They didn't tell us to make a Gantt chart. One of the first things that came into my head was a Gantt chart, but personally, I just don't really like using those. But we developed diagrams of the schedules. And with Trello, it works more as like a board to-do list system. So like you would set up different boards for all the different projects, and you would add in different cards and lists. So it was a large customizable to-do list to meet specific goals that was
Okay,
Did you consider using black and white instead of color?
What?
you ever consider using black and white instead of color?
We did. There just wasn't enough time to really dive into that on the project. We weren't entirely sure how much more accurate that would make the gun detection model better. Theoretically, using black and white images is a lot more accurate than using color images, since like it has to take in a lot of different colors. And so when trying to detect objects, all the different colors could maybe throw off object detection, whereas with black and white, or grayscale they call it, it doesn't have to take into consideration as many colors. So, but we just didn't really get around to it. Or there just wasn't enough time, and it wasn't really a part of the scope for the project. But it was discussed as like a possible improvement for it. So we did consider lowering the resolution of the image, so it didn't have to search through as many pixels, and brightening darker spots. So darker spots, all the colors are very similar and stuff. So to make it more accurate, we would brighten those up. So that's what we did to make it better.
I'm sorry, we need to go on to the next presentation. Okay, let's